Good evening. I am Kimberly Coleman, pronoun she and hers, president of the Beta Kappa chapter of Beta Phi Omega Sorority Incorporated. Beta Phi Omega Sorority is one of the oldest LGBTQ plus sororities, founded as an organization that did not discriminate against women because of their ethnic background and sexual orientations. We were founded on the campus of Florida A&M University and are celebrating 20 years of service and sisterhood. You can find out more about our prestigious organization by visiting www.betaphiomega.org. Shout out to my amazing sorors in all of our chapters for engaging with and serving your local communities with much needed information about local polling places, times, and procedures in support of our national Vote with Pride campaign. With a passion for voting instilled in me by my parents, I have the honor and privilege this evening for a third and final installment to call together diverse and phenomenal women in the LGBTQ plus community to discuss the important topic of exactly how to vote with pride, focused on critical information that voters need when preparing to vote in person, both in the District of Columbia, Maryland, and Virginia, and across the country, as we are just 5 days away from November 3rd, 2020. I will be your moderator tonight, as well as serving as a panel member during our virtual dialogue, stepping in for my soror, LaToya Williams, who, due to health reasons, is unfortunately unable to join us this evening. Please keep LaToya and her family in your prayers and daimoku. That's prayer in the form of chanting for those Buddhists out there. We will miss you, LaToya. We are here to inform you with the latest information on how to ensure your vote is counted when voting in person, including what you need to do if you are challenged for documents, how to file a provisional ballot and cure it. Don't worry, you'll learn about what that is, how to recognize and deal with unofficial poll watchers that may question you, and so much more. As the president of the Beta Kappa chapter of Beta Phi Omega Sorority Incorporated, our chapter serves DC, suburban Maryland, including Prince George's, Anne Arundel, Charles, and Montgomery counties, as well as Northern Virginia. We support our community in a variety of ways, including hosting the Black Lesbian Support Group, which meets virtually right now on the third Sunday of every month at 1 p.m. in partnership with the DC Center for the LGBTQ community, where we chit-chat, reflect, and network in a safe space. In October, my sorors hosted a virtual scavenger hunt as a part of our support group, where I was able to play, and I won first place. Had a blast, so much fun. I live with my beautiful wife, Leah, in Maryland, and have two amazing adult sons, Anthony and Andrew. I am passionate about serving my community, especially when the opportunity to form amazing partnerships or endeavors such as this one present themselves. I am a practicing Nichiren Buddhist with the Soka Gakkai International, where our goal is world peace through absolute happiness and personal transformation. I would like again to take this opportunity to thank Cherie Hughes, co-chair of the HRC Greater DC Steering Committee and the HRC Greater DC Political Action and Community Engagement Team, for their help taking the possibility of this panel and making it a reality. Also, thank you, Taylor Pinkney of HRCDC, for your behind-the-scenes support of this amazing series of events. Your job is not an easy one, and you have been outstanding. While we will miss LaToya Williams, Director of National Programming for Beta Phi Omega Sorority Incorporated and Vice President of the Beta Lambda chapter serving the Baltimore area and co-chair of the Baltimore Steering Committee with the Human Rights Campaign, LaToya has been and continues to be a sister to help behind the scenes to ensure the success of tonight's event. Thanks, Soror. We are fortunate to bring back our amazing partners for this panel, who are both full-time staff members with the Human Rights Campaign, the largest LGBTQ advocacy group in the US, with a goal to ensure those of us who are trans, people of color, and HIV positive are treated as full and equal citizens within the LGBTQ rights movement, across our country and around the world. To learn more about this amazing organization, you can visit www.hrc.org. Joining us tonight is Narissa Rahman, pronoun she and hers, Associate Regional Field Director for the Human Rights Campaign. Narissa recently developed and led HRC's six-figure investment in the 2019 Virginia General Assembly elections, targeting and mobilizing thousands of voters who helped elect a pro-equality majority in the House and Senate, giving the Commonwealth a progressive trifecta for the first time in almost 3 decades. So amazing. Thank you so much, Narissa, for all your hard work. It's great to see you again tonight. Narissa played a key campaign role in the 2020 Virginia legislative session, where Virginia became the first in the South to pass comprehensive non-discrimination protections for LGBTQ Virginians. So important. Prior to working at HRC, Narissa led field work in the South for 8 years for progressive candidates at the state, legislature, congressional, and gubernatorial levels. Through her passion for voter registration, voting rights, and equal access to the polls, Narissa hopes to make the ballot box accessible to all. She is originally from Barbados, but was raised in Florida, and has slowly been making her way up the East Coast. Narissa currently resides in Richmond, Virginia, with her partner and their 3 new houseplants. Wait a minute, it's not 3 anymore, Narissa. How many is it now?
You can see at least 2 of them right behind me. So a lot more.
You all are doing great. Green thumbs over there. Well, welcome back. Thank you for all your hard work and for your assistance in planning tonight's event and serving on the panel. It's great to see you again.
Thank you. So glad to be here, and 6 days left till decision day. So we're going to be talking about some fun stuff tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really coming down to the wire. So we have a lot of great information for our joint audiences. And we are glad to have Hope Jackson join us again. Hope, hi Hope, great to see you. Hope is an experienced advocate and campaign manager who serves as HRC's Deputy Campaign Director, managing legislative and electoral efforts across the Southern, Midwest, and Mountain West states. She is responsible for the long-term strategic planning and implementation of HRC's organizing efforts, strengthening HRC's partnerships and coalitions nationwide. Prior to joining HRC, Hope was an employment, labor, and bankruptcy attorney. Although not practicing, Hope's commitment to social justice fuels the work she does every day in the fight for LGBTQ+ equality. Hope, thank you for taking your time out of what is surely a mad dash to the finish and an extremely busy campaign season to join us this evening. It's great to be here.
My pleasure to be here with you all again. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Ladies, your vast wealth of experience, passion, and knowledge is sure to continue to inspire, engage, and inform our joint LGBTQ+ communities for this critical discussion on Decision Day 2020. Next Tuesday, less than a week away, as Narissa reminded us, November 3rd. To the community joining us live at home, we encourage you to share this on your pages, start a watch party to ensure as many of your friends and family can get this critical information as possible. We have expanded our reach this evening since the topics have widened outside the DMV, and we are streaming live tonight via multiple pages: the Beta Phi Omega Sorority Incorporated national page, the Beta Kappa and Beta Lambda chapter Facebook pages, and the HRC Greater DC Facebook pages, as well as the Beta Kappa chapter YouTube page. Wherever you are joining us from, if you have specific questions, share those as well. We will be able to see them and we will cover as many of them as we can. So let's get started. We are knee deep in this election season, as Narissa has explained it to us. This is an election season this year. At this time, we are literally just days away from Decision Day 2020. And a record number, over 75 million voters have already cast their ballots to ensure that their votes will be counted on election day. That's more than 18 million than all the pre-election votes that were cast in the 2016 presidential election, with 6 days to go. So clearly, the country is engaging and taking action during this election season. But we want to talk briefly about, in the event you're a viewer at home, or perhaps you have a friend or a family member that still needs to register to vote, maybe needs to verify or update their registration. We wanted to inform you, is that possible on election day, or maybe even during early voting? And the answer to that question is, in the DMV, partially, yes. For those of you living in Maryland, day of registration is allowed both during early voting and on election day. So if you're not registered, if you need to update your registration, you can do it now. Early voting started Monday in Maryland. In DC, day of registration is allowed on election day only. So that'll be on Tuesday, November 3rd. And at this time, Virginia is one of the 29 states that does not allow any day of registration. Some states where our sorority has members, such as North Carolina, home to our Alpha Alpha chapter members, or Illinois, home to our Beta Gamma chapter members, also allow early voting registration, but requirements vary by state. So the best way to know for certain is to visit www.vote.org to check to see if your state is one that allows early voting and or election day registration. Okay, so hopefully you're registered. Hopefully you've checked your registration. But as you check in on your friends and family, if they need some help and assistance, please help them out. And let's see if we can make sure that they are able to vote just days away on election day. So any comments on that issue, Hope or Narissa? Okay. All right, cool. So question for you, Narissa. Early voting started around the country at various times. We know, 75 million votes have been already cast. So if a viewer has an absentee ballot, but they haven't returned it yet, how would you recommend that they cast their ballot at this point to ensure that it gets counted on election day?
Yeah, this is a great question. And, for a lot of folks, you may have received your ballot. You requested it back earlier in the spring. You're like, this pandemic's, I need to have my things in place. I'm going to request my ballot, and I just want to make sure that I vote. Some folks have changed their mind if they're going to vote by mail or by absentee ballot. But a lot of folks, receive their ballots, upwards of almost 2 months ago. And, you may be remembering it, that you have it in hands now. You've done your research on who you're voting for and, amendments that you're voting for. Mm-hmm. But, right now, if you still have your vote by mail ballot, and that is how you've decided you are going to still vote this year, a lot of Board of Elections and secretaries of state are saying, and including the USPS are saying, if you still have your ballot, turning it in by mail is probably not the best option to make sure it gets there on time. I know a lot of states, including DC, Maryland, Virginia, will accept ballots that are postmarked before election day. They will accept them, up till, I know in Virginia accepts them up until noon on the Friday after the election. Okay. But there's just so much at stake this year, but also, we know by the early voting numbers that you just talked about, Kim, that, the U.S. Postal Service is dealing with a lot right now, and we cannot guarantee that ballots put in the mail tomorrow morning are going to arrive to be counted in time for the election. So, that being said, the great thing is that you do not only have the mail as an option to return your ballot and make sure that it's counted. DC, Maryland, and Virginia all have ballot drop-off locations in many localities where you can, get yourself to a drop-off location or have a friend and family member take you there to safely and securely return your ballot at a drop-off location. In addition to that, you are also able to return it at your local registrar's office. If you are unable to get to a drop-off location or you can't find one for some reason, but early voting in Virginia, for a lot of places ends on Saturday, and DC and Maryland and on Monday. So you have time to get your ballot in. It is not too late at all. If for some reason you can't get it in, you should still be able to return it on election day to either your polling place or your registrar's office. So bottom line, if you take nothing away from what I just said, is if you still have your ballot in hand, make sure you've filled it out, put it in the envelopes, and get it to a drop-off location or get it to your registrar's office.
Perfect. I got it. So actually, my wife and I did that this week. We decided to get absentee ballots, but we did return them in person on Monday, first day of early voting. It was super easy. We went to a local polling place. We had to go in Maryland. You have to go to a polling place in your county. So we did that and we dropped it in the ballot box. And it's actually very exciting there that day. There was a lot of people there voting. They had a DJ. It felt like election day, it felt like the official day. So I really appreciated that. But so for anyone out there watching outside of the DMV, check in read your ballot, make sure you're following all the specific things that it has to do, sign the envelope if that's what it asks you for, just follow everything that it says. And Narissa is letting you know at this point, return it in person, return it to your local election office, find a ballot box and return it that way. So we only have a few days left. Thanks, Narissa.
Yeah, and I think it's important, a lot of people requested mail-in ballots this year, not because it was the way that they were going to decide to vote. Their vote plan may have looked something completely different back in March. And for some states that had primary elections where we were able to go and vote in person, a lot of us assumed that's how we would vote on election day in November. The pandemic forced a lot of people to think about their vote plan a little bit deeper and what they would be comfortable doing. And some folks since then have changed their minds. We've seen folks going out and voting, but a lot of, for those people who have requested their absentee ballots and received them and still want to get them in that way, it is not too late to get them in. Don't feel like the mail is the only way you need to get it in. There are a lot of options for you to still vote safely and securely this way in the vote plan that you came up with this year.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Very true. Yep, we voted from our car. We just drove around, dropped the ballot in from our car, and off we went. So went to play tennis. Okay. All right. So thank you, Narissa. So speaking about more on in-person elections. So Hope, we've seen images from around the country of millions of voters casting their ballots in person during this early voting. Some locations that I have seen in and around, say, Atlanta, that's home to our Beta Zeta chapter members. I've read stories on social media of voters in line, some as long as 10 hours. That's inspiring. It's encouraging from some point to see the level of commitment that voters have to the election process and the level of determination to ensure that their voices are going to be heard. But my question is, why are these long lines forming? Are they a form of modern day voter suppression? And what can viewers do to prepare to vote in person?
I definitely think it's both. The first thing I would say, no one was prepared for the pandemic. And so there are a lot more folks who are voting in this election. We've seen record numbers of turnout. And then all these folks are going to the polling location, but we also have to deal with the fact that there are a lot more eligible voters. and folks weren't prepared for the number of people that were coming out. And we know that our democracy works best when everyone has access to the ballot box. Modern day voter suppression often disproportionately impacts people of color, LGBTQ folks, the elderly, out-of-state college students, and people with disabilities. And so you have folks that are waiting in these very long lines, but the other thing they have to deal with, they could potentially be dealing with, is partisan poll challengers, people that are there to intimidate. And so even though the lines are long, I think it's a good sign that folks are voting, but we also just have to be vigilant about how they're getting their votes cast or whether or not folks are being turned around. I think voter suppression can range from strict voter ID laws, folks that are challenging folks on their driver's license, or this person doesn't live in the district. It can be all of these things. Over 21 million people don't have state issued IDs. And so that's something else that could be causing long lines, people being challenged by those things. Voter ID laws definitely restrict folks. I think the cost, the travel required, underlying documents to actually get an ID mostly impacts marginalized communities. And so this is why the Voting Rights Amendment Act is so important. Other things that folks may be experiencing is the limitation around voter registration, the window of time that you have, the time that you have to return your ballot, massive purges of voter rolls. And so people may be there at the polling location and be told that their name is not on that list. And so that's something else that could cause a lot of holdup. Other things that happened before this moment, redrawing of district lines, and that determines the weight of your vote. In Georgia, we saw with the last midterm elections that they had this exact match thing where people had to have the exact name, the exact address on file. And that also had a lot of people's votes being thrown away, essentially. In Tennessee, there were hurdles around third-party voter registration drives. So all of these things impact whether or not someone has access to the ballot box. And so if you are going to the polling location to vote, make sure that you have your state issued ID or your passport. I would even bring a utility bill with me as a secondary thing to say, here's where I live. Make sure you have your mask and your sanitizer, lots of snacks, a cell phone with a charger. Then just remember the voter protection hotline, 866-OUR-VOTE or 866-687-8683, because that's the number you can call to make sure you get help if you're challenged about your ballot or if you're challenged about your identification or otherwise.
Okay. So you gave us a lot of great information. So it sounds like there's a number of reasons why long lines are forming in some places. The most important thing, it sounds like, is to really be prepared, go with your documents, and go with the things that you need. If you have to wait, you might even need a chair, if you're, depending upon how long you might be there. Okay. And so, but I want to dig in a little bit because on this live, we promised to highlight some forms of these modern day voter suppression, and you touched on some of them. And, to the viewers at home, we are not here to scare you. We are here to inform you and prepare you, and also to inspire you to get involved in your local districts if you're not already, because this is where a lot of the laws, Hope mentioned voter ID laws, that allow for voter suppression and intimidation are formed. So, so Hope, again, for those within our community, what if someone is challenged about documents? We said go with documents, but now, and I'm talking about a challenge from a person who is an actual official poll worker. What should people do to make sure that their vote is counted?
So I would say the first thing, ask the question, like, what are you challenging my vote for?
Okay.
Why are you challenging my ballot or my identification? Because your appearance is not a reason for you not to receive a regular ballot. So you want to ask that question. Don't let them just scare you away, because that's how voter intimidation works. You want to make sure that you ask those questions. If they're asking for your picture ID, you want to be able to show them those things. But just asking the questions, why am I being challenged? Ask for a supervisor, someone who's definitely going to know, should know what the election laws are. Oftentimes people don't. You just have to think that these are voters, ordinary citizens that have signed up to become a poll worker or poll watcher. And so if you're being challenged, you want to ask for an official person. And just last but not least, do not leave that voting location unless you've talked to someone who's a supervisor, unless you've asked for a legal protection person and you've requested a provisional ballot. You are entitled to that. And they should also give you follow-up actions to make sure that your vote is counted. You don't want to leave that location until you have all of those things.
Okay. Okay. So Hope, you mentioned a key thing. Do not leave the voting location without asking for a provisional ballot. So let's dig into that a little bit more. So exactly what is a provisional ballot? Because if I'm at the polls, I can imagine myself. I've been in line for hours. I get there. I think my registration is fine. I think I have the right documents. I've done everything that you've said, and I'm told I can't vote. I'm going to be extremely frustrated. I'm going to be angry. I'm going to be feeling all kinds of emotions. So we're not here to scare viewers. The vast majority of viewers are likely going to be able to vote without a challenge, but we want viewers to be prepared in the event that this happens to them. So can you explain that provisional ballot process in vivid detail?
So I will say this happened to me in 2016, where my name was not on the voting list, on the registered voters list. And my information didn't match. So it was all the challenges that you possibly have.
Wow.
So I think the first thing you want to ask is, can you check the supplemental list? Can you check the statewide election system? Making sure that they're not just telling you this from one piece of paper that they looked at, because they do have a complete file of all voters. If your name is not on either of these lists, then you ask them to make sure they're confirming that you're at the correct polling location, because that could be another thing. They have the total wrong list and you're at the wrong place. So that could happen. If they've done all of those things, then you ask for a provisional ballot. Usually what they require you to do is to fill out an affirmation saying you are a registered voter, you are eligible to vote, and this is your information. And so your provisional ballot will look a lot like the regular ballot, but it will have that is provisional. The next thing you want to do is make sure that you've talked to that particular election official about what is it that you need to follow up to do, because they should be giving you instructions on what you're going to do next so that your vote will be counted. Usually it's going to be some form of making sure you return back to that election office to say, here's my ID, or here's the follow-up paperwork that you needed. Once they give you whatever those instructions are, you have to do that within a certain time frame. In my state, it's 3 days before you leave. Your ballot will look a lot like the regular ballot. So you're going to fill it out just as simple as you would do for the regular, but make sure that your information is there. Make sure you get those instructions before you leave. That way you can follow up. So it looks just about the same. The only difference is you're filling out an affirmation. I'm just saying, this is who I am. I should be voting in this election.
Okay. All right. So, and when I'm filling out that ballot, I'm asking for it, I'm filling it out, I'm handing it over, but I need to get those instructions. And then when I follow up, is that what you mean when you say to cure that ballot? Okay.
So curing it is simply remedying whatever problem they said was with your ballot. So it could be a matter of your ID. It could be a matter of incorrect polling information that they have. A number of reasons your ballot could be challenged. And so curing it just means you want to make sure you fix whatever that issue is so that your vote can count, and making sure that you get information for your election office. That way you're calling the right folks to say, hey, is my vote counted?
Okay. Okay. That's really helpful. So at the end of the day, I don't want to have to file a provisional ballot. I really want to. I'm getting the gist of this, Hope, that I really want to avoid a provisional ballot, if at all possible. I want to find my name on the voter registration rolls and be able to cast my normal ballot. I don't know if they're for it. But in the event that that's not possible, after I speak with a supervisor and I go through all those steps, I show all my documentation, last resort, provisional. But then I have to follow up. I have to take additional action the next day. I'm
Absolutely.
a dedicated voter.
Yes. The other thing I will say too is talk to someone who's a legal observer to
Okay.
make sure, because they can always back you up if you have all the things that you need. You want to make sure you have a witness to that, or you
Okay.
can call the 866 our vote number.
Okay.
So making sure you're documenting what's happening to you.
Okay, we're going to put that on the screen. That's the 1-866 our vote, right? So folks at home, save it in your phone now so that you're ready. If in case something happens, hopefully nothing will. We just want you to be prepared. So save it in your phone. That way you know the number to call. That's the voter protection hotline in the event that you are challenged at the polls. All right. Thanks, Hope. Really appreciate it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more. Narissa, we're talking about access to the ballot box, and I know that's a passion of yours, making sure that it's there for everyone. So many of us are differently able. I mean, I have LASIK. That's how I can see all of you today. If it weren't for LASIK, I'd be wearing glasses. If a viewer needs accommodations to vote, what are they legally eligible for when voting in person?
Yeah, this is a great question, and an important one. We want to make sure that everyone, no matter who you are, that you have access to the ballot box and that you're able to cast your vote safely, securely, and just cast it in general. There are some folks who are dealing with illness right now. There are some folks who have physical disabilities or are differently abled. There are some folks who, because of seniority, cannot travel inside a vote center. And that should not prevent you from being able to cast your ballot this year, or any year, not just this year. But a lot of states, including the DMV, have what we call curbside voting, and this essentially allows you to vote from your car. If you're unable to get inside a vote center, or you are, immunocompromised to where you should not be going into a public place with a lot of other people, or if you just have you're differently able or have a physical disability that prevents you from getting in, that's not going to prevent you from voting this year. A lot of locations, again, like I said, including the DMV, have what we call curbside voting. So curbside voting, essentially, most polling locations on election day or early vote centers are going to have specific parking spaces for you to pull in if you're going to curbside vote. And basically what that means, that designated parking spot, is when you pull in, a poll worker should know, or an election official should know, that you're there to curbside vote. What that's going to do is just going to signal to them that they're going to send someone out and take you through the steps of what you need to vote from your car and fill out your ballot from your car, and then they're going to make sure that gets processed inside. In some cases, if you are, given the high turnout that we're seeing all across the country, especially even in Virginia, over 2 million people have already early voted. Folks may be busy, or they may not have someone designated always keeping an eye out. If you have someone who's driving you to your polling location to curbside vote, whether it's during early voting or on election day, that person who is joining you can go into the polling location or go into the vote center and say, hey, I have someone here who needs to curbside vote, and they should be able to get that election official or get that poll worker out to you to help you. So again, if you're saying, I have a lot of things happening right now that I think are preventing me from getting to a polling location or going inside, or you have something to where, due to doctor's orders or just, your own illness, that you cannot go inside, please do not let that deter you. There are a lot of ways where you can still cast your ballot this year safely and securely and get it counted. So I highly encourage you to, look up in your area what curbside voting is, and, feel empowered that when you go to your polling location, that you can flag someone down or have someone go in for you to let them know that you're there to curbside vote.
That's awesome. That's really, I'm glad to hear it. It could apply to maybe someone who didn't request an absentee ballot. They plan to vote in person, but maybe now they have COVID, And, maybe with doctor's orders, maybe they could use that method too. So that's really great, curbside voting. So check that out, folks, if that applies to you, if you are differently abled, or if, like Narissa said, if for any reason you can't go inside, curbside voting might be an option for you. Thanks, Narissa. It's really good to know. All right. So turning the topic again a little bit. So a different question. In every state except for 2, it's kind of unbelievable, voters automatically lose their right to vote when they are convicted of a felony. I really didn't know that until preparing for this, honestly. So felony disenfranchisement varies depending on many factors, including the state the voter lives in, the stage that they might be in, meaning whether it's a prison, parole, etc. One study I read from 2016 said it estimated more than 6 million voters lost their right to vote due to being convicted of a felony. Now, some people may take this as the standard and say, that's right, they shouldn't be allowed to vote. But Hope, can you help us understand why this is actually a form of modern day voter suppression? And what can viewers at home that might be in this situation do to access the ballot box this election?
Yeah, I think the first thing is that these restrictive laws often impact persons of color. And so it's disproportionately impacting people of color. And there's a patchwork of voting rights restoration across the country. And so a person could be disenfranchised with felony conviction when they've actually served time, where they've been criminally convicted. They could have their rights restored upon the finishing of their sentence, including prison, parole, or probation. In some states, it's automatically restored when they're released, and it can definitely vary. I think that's the other confusing part about it. Every state's laws, it's different, and navigating that patchwork is challenging, especially when election officials often misunderstand their own state laws. And so you're not taking an attorney with you when you go and vote. And so it's very hard for a person to prove that they have the right to vote. And so felony disenfranchisement definitely sends a message to folks that are returning to the community that they don't count and their voice doesn't count, and they should not be heard. And so in 2018, I think in Florida, for sure, passed a ballot measure that gave 1.4 million Floridians back their access to the ballot box. And I think this was an important decision that was made by the people of Florida, but this does not look like all the other states that we see where they have this patchwork. And so folks who are facing intimidation or that are being turned away from the ballot box and you're not quite sure, I would suggest that you definitely call that 866 Our Vote number, or you can go online to research whether or not your state has these laws in place and what that looks like. And so 866 Our Vote is like our one-stop shop for understanding the laws, our voter ID laws, our conviction laws around voting disenfranchisement. And so I think that is the one-stop shop. The Brennan Center actually did some studies around this, just talking about that patchwork and how it disproportionately impacts people of color. And so it's just another form of voter suppression because people don't necessarily know their rights. So I would just advise anyone that is thinking about this or have people in your family or your friends that are facing this to make sure that they're going to look at their laws in your state and getting support to get back their access to the ballot.
Yeah, those are great points. It's good news to hear about Florida. I hope that other states follow suit. And like you said, because the laws vary state to state, if people have moved, and maybe they thought that they weren't eligible to vote in a state where they previously lived, in another state, they may be eligible. So being knowledgeable about the current laws, because they're changing, as well as the laws where they live today, is critical. So thank you for that. If you are just joining us, I am Kimberly Coleman of Beta Phi Omega Sorority Incorporated, here today with the Human Rights Campaign, discussing how to vote with pride on Decision Day 2020, coming up next week, Tuesday, November 3rd, informing you on how to combat and deal with various modern day voter suppression and intimidation tactics, preparing you for in-person voting this election season. I want to turn attention now to back to the long lines that we're seeing around the country already during early voting, and covering a very important topic of voting in person, and that's poll closing time. So if you're voting in person, you're waiting in line, the time comes for the polls to close, say 7 p.m. Legally, the polls cannot close until all voters in line have been able to cast their ballot. And I want to bring that up because you may remember seeing videos of voters banging on the doors of polling locations where voting was being held. It was in Kentucky and Georgia, could have been other locations as well in the primary elections this year. But because of their refusal to leave, and rightfully so, and calling others, probably like the 1866 Our Vote line, to get involved, an emergency order was filed and anyone waiting in line was indeed allowed to cast their ballot. The polls were reopened. So it's heartbreaking. I mean, it's heartbreaking for me to watch the video, but at the same time, it's very encouraging because people knew their rights. And that's what we want to make sure that you know your rights. So if you are standing in line and the polls close, do not leave. Do not get out of line. Save the voter protection hotline in your cell phone now, 1-866-OUR-VOTE. Hope and Narissa have both told you what that number is, and call them from the line to demand that your vote is counted on election day. It's very important. Your voice is powerful and it needs to be heard. So anything else, anything you want to add on that, Hope or Narissa?
Do not leave the line.
The anthem that we all say is that if you are in line when polls close, you are allowed to vote. So Hope and I both have it tattooed somewhere on our arm. You know, if you are in line when the polls close, you are allowed to vote. So
yep, absolutely. Absolutely. So, and that's something, so much of voting is state specific, but that is something that appears to be universal. So, which is great. So do not leave the line. All right. In the age of social media, unfortunately, disinformation is really rampant. And in the 2016 election, it has been confirmed by the national security community that foreign countries were spreading disinformation across social media with the goal of affecting the outcome of the last presidential election. Disinformation comes in both virtual and real life forms. I read an article recently out of California where fake or unofficial ballot boxes were deployed, and legal action against this is working its way through the courts. But as of now, last I read, the boxes remain for unsuspecting voters to deposit their ballots into. Narissa, how can voters ensure they are utilizing the correct source for information on polling places, times, and now apparently even ballot boxes?
Yeah, this is a thing that we're seeing pop up. I wouldn't say it's as rampant as the disinformation that's spreading, but it is happening in pockets around the country. But you know, go to those official verified sources that we know that we can count on. So official state websites like your Department of Elections or Board of Elections, sites like vote.org, sites like iwillvote.com that are going to give you that real, factual, verified information, official information that is on there. You know, these ballot drop boxes are marked a certain way, and you know, they're not just out in any location. They're usually near a vote center where you can go vote. They're at your registrar's office. They are, you know, they are secure drop boxes that are in secure locations. So we, you know, highly encourage you to go, you know, call your registrar's office if you're not sure. Go to your local Board of Elections office and put in where you live so that you can find the drop box that's closest to you so that your vote can be counted. Go to sites like vote.org, go to sites like iwillvote.com to check out that information. But if you're walking around and someone says, oh, I have a Dropbox where you can drop off your ballot and we'll make sure it gets counted. That is that is a bunch of baloney, and that's not true. So don't, you know, the voting this year is, we've got a little few more steps to take to make sure that it's counted, but it's still easy for you to do it safely and securely. So just spend that extra minute going to iwillvote.com, looking up where there's a Dropbox location near you, and get it in that way. Don't trust everything that you see out there, but just spending that extra few minutes looking up that information will go a long way to make sure that you're casting your ballot safely and securely.
Great. Thank you, Narissa. I appreciate that. And I think it's key to just use an official source of information right now in the age that we are in. So very good. Thank you. So earlier we talked about what voters can do if they're challenged for documents by election officials, true election officials when voting in person. Reminder, ask why you're being challenged. Try to solve the issue. At last resort, file a provisional ballot, follow up the next day to cure that ballot. According to an article in Rolling Stone magazine that I read, depending on the state, unofficial poll observers enlisted by political parties and not by the election board may look very official, and in some states may be armed, and could challenge a voter's eligibility based on their address, citizenship, and even the date that they registered to vote. North Carolina, where some of our members of our Alpha Alpha chapter live, allow anyone registered to vote with good moral character, whatever that means, to work as a poll observer. Reports indicate that in Philadelphia, that's home to our Beta Delta chapter, where 41% of the population is Black, that may be an epicenter for unofficial 2020 poll watching efforts. So Hope, what should viewers do if they go to the polls and they believe that they're being challenged by unofficial poll watchers?
Yeah, I definitely think this is happening across the board, where you have folks that are observers or poll challengers. It doesn't take that much to become a poll observer or challenger. These are ordinary citizens, but these are folks who are put in that polling location to make sure they intimidate voters. There could be folks from a particular political party. That is their whole job, is to challenge what's being cast. I think the one thing folks can do is ask for credentials. An official person should have official credentials. And if that person is challenging you outside of that polling location, so if you're driving up and that person automatically says to you, hey, we're checking ID, or we need to know who you are before you go in, you need to ask all the questions at that point. No one should be checking you in line or checking you in at a polling location in a parking lot. If you are challenged about your ID or your ballot before you even enter that building, I think you definitely ask for an official. Make sure you get inside of that building to find a supervisor to talk to. That person may be targeting specific groups of people. We know this has happened in other like states that are predominantly Black or brown, where folks are being targeted. And so you want to talk to a supervisor. If at any point they say, oh, you got to get out of line, that absolutely should not happen. You want to make sure you go through all of the same steps. I need to know why I'm being challenged. I need more information on what this challenge is. I need to ask for a provisional ballot. I need all the information on that, because you still should be allowed to cast a provisional ballot either way. But you just want to make sure that you're talking to an official person rather than a political party's person or a campaign's person. Because that, again, anyone can be a poll observer or a poll watcher. And so only specific folks can challenge, and they shouldn't be presenting that challenge to you.
I see. Okay. So anyone can be a watcher, but only certain people can challenge. And voters, viewers out there, if you are at the polls and you are being challenged, you have the absolute right to say, I need to see your ID. I need to know that you are an official poll observer that can challenge me. Is that what you're saying, Hope? Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And I hear a theme in Hope's direction to us audience, because remember when we got challenged for documents, the direction was ask why we're being challenged, ask what the problem is, ask for a supervisor. It's the same direction here. Ask for this person's identification, ask what the problem is, ask for a supervisor. So we really need to make sure that we are empowered when we're going to the polls, and that we are not going to be silenced, and that we are there. We are very determined with a purpose. And if we have folks in our family, could be for whatever reason, maybe older generation or whatever, we may need to go with some people to help them out and be a voice for those people, if maybe they're not going to be comfortable doing that for themselves. So think about your friends and family that way as well. Thanks, Hope. I really appreciate that. And it's very important for our communities, like you said, that are predominantly Black and Brown. They very well are being targeted in a lot of instances. So you need to be prepared.
Yeah, I just want to add one additional thing. If you have an elderly person in your family, they can always take a second person with them, or a person with a disability that needs support. So they can go into the polling location, into that booth with them to help them fill out their ballot. So you want to make sure those folks feel supported as well.
Absolutely. That's a great point. Thank you for adding that. All right. So ladies, we are running close to time. I know you all are very busy with these last minute election pushes. I want to give you both a chance to just share any last thoughts, calls to action that you would have for our audience on exactly how to vote with pride as we close out the election season. Narissa, we could start with you.
Well, thanks again for having HRC be a part of this. It's been super fun and super informative, and we hope we've provided everyone with a lot of great information as we move through election season for you to vote this year. But I think the biggest takeaway, however, if I was to leave you with one message, is that your vote is your voice, and it is not too late to speak up this year. You may have said to yourself, I never requested an absentee ballot, or I'm not sure how to vote. There is still time, and there's still ways for you to vote. If you've got that ballot, return it to a drop-off location. If you want to vote in person, you can still vote early in Virginia, Maryland, DC. And if you want to vote on election day, that's an option for you too. And there are a lot of people looking out for you to make sure that you cast your vote safely and securely. There are, as Kim said at the beginning, 75 million people already in this country have early voted. This is going to be a historic year for turnout. And, we really want each and every one of you to be part of that historic turnout this year. And you can be a part of it. We're practically 5 days away from the election now. There is still time to vote both safely and securely. And, we hope that we've provided you with a lot of information to go out and do that over the next 5 days. Additionally, there's still a lot of work to be done. We know that there's a lot of outstanding ballots that have been requested that still need to be returned. So organizations, like HRC and many around the country are doing whatever we can to follow up with folks who we know have requested ballots to make sure that they have the information to fill them out and return them on time so they're counted. And if you haven't requested a ballot, we're also working to contact you to say, hey, you can still go out and vote if you'd like to this year. So there are a lot of ways to still get involved. The first way to get involved is cast your ballot this year. Get that done. Help your family and friends fill out their ballots. Help them, take away some of the stuff you've learned this year, or sorry, not this year, during these webinars, and, get your friends and family to vote. We've got to vote y'all this year. It's the greatest thing we can do as being Americans in this country.
Absolutely. Thanks, Narissa. Really appreciate it. We've learned so much from you. Thank you for all your work. Yeah. Hope, how about you? Final words?
Thank you all for having me 3 times back. It was great to have these conversations with you all. I just want to echo everything Narissa said. If you have not cast your vote, please do so. It is not too late, and it's not too late to impact that vote of your friends and family. So make sure that you triple your impact. Call 3 friends today Ask them if they voted. If they have not, ask them what's their plan. If they don't have a plan, help them make a plan. And then finally, I'll just say that November 3rd is just a mile marker for us. There is so much more work that we'll be doing after November 3rd. Not all of the counts will happen on that day. So folks should definitely stay vigilant in watching what happens, but just participate, because it's not just the presidency. It's not just congressional seats that we're voting for. It's folks up and down that ballot that impact your everyday lived equality. And so I will just say to you, make sure that you're casting your vote up and down the ballot and making sure that you're holding folks accountable after November 3rd. And yeah, I think that's all I got. Make
Wonderful.
sure you get that vote counted.
Yep, absolutely. I think we're all speaking of one mind tonight. Vote, vote, vote. So thank you, Hope. It's been a pleasure having you. If you've joined us midstream, the full video will be available on the Beta Phi Omega Sorority Incorporated, Beta Kappa, and Beta Lambda chapters, as well as HRC Greater DC Facebook pages and the Beta Kappa chapter YouTube page. So please rewatch it, share it with your friends and family so they can have this critical information. My call to action to you all tonight, thank you, amazing ladies, for all of your support and for doing these live videos with us. To the audience at home, cast your vote without delay. That really is imperative. Let no one and nothing suppress your voice. Too many before us have fought and died for our right to vote in this pivotal election. It is truly the election of our lifetimes. You are powerful. Your voice is needed now more than ever. If you have already voted, you still have work to do. Check with your family and friends. Make sure they vote too. Help them make a plan for Election Day. Hope laid it out for you. Call your 3 friends. Hope, Narissa, thank you. You're amazing, ladies, engaging, informing, inspiring our community this election season. I cannot thank you enough. Taylor, behind the scenes, fantastic job. Latoy, get well. We missed you. I'll see you soon. Have a great night, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.